My sister had everything handed to her growing up: new cars, private school, designer vacations, and all the attention. Then during Thanksgiving dinner, she found out I had $26 million and completely broke down in front of everyone. My uncle shouted, my dad just stared. My name is Madison Cole. I'm 31. And if you think money heals old wounds, stay tuned. I grew up in a house where love was a competition disguised as parenting. My sister Belle was the favorite, the gifted one, the ballerina with Ivy League tutors and applause for every tiny success. I was the quiet one, dressed in hand-me-downs, going to public school, and getting encouragement that sounded more like duty than care. When I graduated high school, Dad told me, "Be practical. You're not like your sister." So while Belle studied art history in Paris, I worked double shifts at a diner, stuffing every tip into a coffee can, labeled Someday. Someday came in the form of a startup job in Austin data analytics, long nights, instant noodles, and no expectations. I worked until my name meant something. And when the company went public, my stock options changed everything. Overnight, I became what my family never imagined: the rich one. I didn't show it off. I stayed quiet. I anonymously bought Dad a new truck, paid off Mom's medical bills, and even cleared Belle's overdue credit cards once. But secrets don't last forever. That Thanksgiving evening, when the conversation turned to who was doing well these days, my uncle joked, "Madison's still scraping by." I smiled and said, "Actually, no." Then Belle's boyfriend blurted it out. My Forbes profile, my company's acquisition, and the number $26 million. The room went silent. Belle's wine glass slipped from her hand. Dad's fork hit his plate. My uncle thundered, 26. What? I just sat there calmly cutting my turkey, knowing this dinner was about to uncover more than jealousy. It was about to reveal the truth. The silence after my uncle's outburst could have shattered glass. Belle's mouth hung open, her face twitching between disbelief and rage. 26 million? She repeated louder this time, as if saying it again might shrink the number. You. From that nerd job? I didn't flinch. Yes, I said, simply slicing another piece of turkey. That nerd job turned into a global analytics firm. I just didn't think it was dinner conversation. Mom tried to smooth things over, her voice trembling. "Belle, sweetie, let's not make a scene." But Belle was already on her feet, eyes blazing. "A scene? Are you kidding me, Mom? She's been sitting here quietly while we helped her all these years, and she's been hiding millions." I set my fork down. "You helped me?" I asked. "You mean those years I lived in a tiny studio apartment while you drove a Range Rover paid for by Dad's loans?" Dad's head snapped toward me. "Watch your tone." "No," I said, my voice steady. "You all watched me struggle, and now you're shocked that I didn't stay there forever." Belle slammed her hand against the table, her eyes glossy with tears and rage. "You. Oh, this family. You don't get to disappear and come back rich." My uncle cut in, his voice booming. "She's right, Madison. Family sticks together. You've got enough to make everyone comfortable. Why hide it?" "Because it was never about comfort," I said. "It was about control." I leaned back, scanning their faces, the same people who once pitied me, dismissed me, and now saw me as a walking ATM. "Did any of you even ask how I earned it?" I asked quietly. "Or do you just want to know how much of it you can have?" Belle's voice cracked. "So you're not even sorry?" "Sorry for what?" I asked. "For surviving without you." That's when Dad finally spoke, his voice low and uncertain, like a man realizing the hierarchy he built had just crumbled. "Madison," he said softly, "you should have told us." I met his eyes. "And you should have believed in me." The table went still. Steam rose from the turkey in perfect silence. For the first time, they really saw me, not the forgotten one, but the untouchable one. Belle's meltdown hit its peak. She snatched her napkin, threw it down, and screamed, "You always wanted to outshine me. You probably planned this." I stayed calm. "You can't plan success, Belle. You work for it." "Oh, don't act so holy," she spat. You think money makes you better? You're still the boring one, the one who begged for attention growing up. Her words didn't sting anymore. They were old bullets, spent and harmless. Uncle Gary, ever the self-appointed family judge, jumped back in. You know, Madison, maybe it's time you gave back. Family supported you when times were tough. I turned slowly toward him. You mean the time you charged me rent to sleep in your basement after my car broke down? Yeah, I remember. The room froze again. Mom whispered, Madison, please, this isn't. No, I said, leaning forward. This is Thanksgiving. It's about gratitude, right? So thank you, Uncle Gary, for teaching me how to survive. Thank you, Belle, for showing me what favoritism looks like. And thank you, Dad, for never believing I'd make it, because that's exactly why I did. Belle's eyes filled with tears, not from guilt but humiliation. You're disgusting, she hissed. Money turned you cold. I shook my head. No. Being ignored did. Money just gave me a voice. Then, like a director cueing chaos, Dad finally stood. His voice trembled with anger. Enough, this family has been through too much to let greed destroy it. Greed, I echoed, standing too. I didn't come here asking for anything. But the second you learned what I have, everyone looked at me like I was a vault with legs. No one spoke. Even the clock on the wall seemed to hesitate. Finally, Mom whispered, Madison, maybe you should go. I nodded slowly, grabbed my coat, and said, You know what? You're right. I'll go. But remember, you pushed me out once for being too small. Don't push me out again for growing bigger. The door closed behind me with quiet finality. Inside, I left them with their turkey and their silence. By the time I reached my car, my hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of finally speaking every truth I'd buried for years. The cold night air hit me like clarity. I sat behind the wheel, staring at my reflection in the dark window. For once, I didn't see the invisible daughter. I saw the woman who had built something no one could take away. The family war didn't end that night. The next morning, my phone lit up. Missed calls, group texts, guilt messages dressed as concern. The family chat was on fire. Belle, I can't believe you'd humiliate me in front of everyone. Uncle Gary, you should apologize. It's not right to flaunt wealth when people are struggling. Dad, let's talk privately. We can still fix this. Fix what? Their pride. Their illusion that I'd always stay beneath them. Instead of replying, I sent one quiet message to the group. No one's entitled to the life I built. I owe no one an apology for thriving. Then I muted the chat. An hour later, Dad showed up at my apartment, no call, no warning. He stood in the hallway holding a pie box, pretending it was a peace offering. Madison? He began, his tone softer now. Belle's hurt. You embarrassed her. She embarrassed herself, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I'd simply stopped pretending. He sighed. You've changed. I met his eyes. No, Dad. I just stopped living by your script. He opened his mouth to argue, but his words faded when he noticed the framed newspaper article on my counter. Austin's youngest female tech executive launches community grant program. His eyes softened. Confusion flickered into something that almost looked like pride, though he didn't want to admit it. You're helping people now, he murmured. Yes, I said simply. The kind who never got a chance, the kind you never believed in. He nodded slowly, unable to meet my gaze. Your mother would have been proud, he said quietly before turning to leave. And for the first time, I didn't chase his approval. I just let him go. The following week, the story took on a life of its own, not online, but in family whispers. Belle spiraled, calling mutual friends, sobbing that I'd ruined Thanksgiving, that I was heartless, that money had turned me cruel. The irony, everyone she called already knew my story. They'd seen the years I was left out of vacations, the forgotten birthdays, the way Dad used to introduce me as the other one. This time, no one bought her version. I was sipping coffee in my office when Rachel, one of our board members, knocked on the door and handed me an envelope. "These came for you," she said with a smirk. Inside was a typed letter, formal yet desperate. "Dear Madison, we've talked as a family. We believe things got out of hand. You've always been generous. We'd like to rebuild this relationship privately. Also, Belle's tuition balance is due this month, and your father thought maybe you'd want to help given your success. Love, Mom and Dad." I laughed out loud, that dry, almost hysterical kind of laugh that comes when you realize nothing's changed. They didn't want reconciliation, they wanted restoration. Not of our relationship, but of their comfort. So I wrote back one paragraph, precise, final, and honest. "Dear family, I've already paid enough for my silence, for my absence, and for your approval. I'm done paying for your comfort too. You can forward any future requests to my lawyer. Sincerely, Madison." When I sent it, I expected guilt, maybe even regret. But what I felt instead was freedom, like a kind of debt forgiveness for the soul. That night, I met with my team to discuss expanding our community grant fund. We decided to rename it the Someday Project after that old coffee can I used to save my diner tips in. And when I saw my name printed on the first check we issued to a single mother in Austin, I realized something profound. Family doesn't always share your blood. Sometimes it shares your scars and chooses to heal with you. The next month was calm, eerily calm, like the world had finally stopped testing me. But peace has a strange way of being interrupted, especially by people who can't stand your silence. It started with a call from an unknown number. I let it ring, then again, and again. Finally, curiosity won. "Madison, it's your uncle." The sound of Uncle Gary's voice dragged up every dinner table argument, every lecture about respecting elders while they disrespected me. "What do you need, Uncle Gary?" He hesitated. "Look, kiddo, I just think you're taking things too far. Belle's really not doing well. She's seeing someone about anxiety. She needs help." "I'm not her therapist or her bank," I said flatly. "You've got millions," he snapped. "You can't just turn your back on blood." I almost laughed. "Blood is just DNA. Loyalty is earned." He sighed heavily. "You sound just like your father now, cold." I hung up before I said something colder. That night, Belle posted another cryptic quote online. "Some people only help strangers because it makes them feel better about ignoring family." It got dozens of likes from distant cousins who hadn't spoken to either of us in years. The cycle continued: guilt, pity, blame. But I didn't bite. Instead of engaging, I doubled down on the Someday Project. We expanded to Dallas, sponsoring scholarships for girls in underfunded schools. Every check I signed built another layer of distance between who I'd been and who I'd become. One evening, while reviewing applications, an email popped up. No subject line, no name, just words. "You're doing good things. Maybe one day I'll deserve your forgiveness." B. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. It wasn't manipulation this time. It was fragile, quiet, and human. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either, because maybe that was the first honest thing my sister had ever said to me. And sometimes forgiveness doesn't need a response. It just needs space to breathe. Winter faded into spring, and with it, the bitterness began to thaw. I still hadn't spoken to Belle, but I no longer felt anger when her name came up. That, I realized, was the real victory, not revenge, but release. Then one morning, my office assistant rushed in wide-eyed. There's someone here asking for you." Before I could respond, Belle stepped through the door. She looked nothing like the polished golden girl I'd grown up resenting. Her hair was tied back messily, her eyes red and swollen, and her designer bag had been replaced by a plain canvas tote. She stood there awkwardly clutching an envelope in both hands. "I didn't know where else to go," she said softly. I stayed seated, arms crossed. "Why now?" She took a shaky breath. "Because I need to apologize while it still matters." I didn't say anything. I just let her speak. I hated you. She admitted, her voice trembling. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you survived what I couldn't. Dad made me feel like the world would fall apart if I wasn't perfect. You left that house and built something. I stayed and pretended. Then she handed me the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, tear-stained, uneven, and raw. I lied about you because I wanted to feel important. I broke something I didn't know how to fix. I don't want your money. I just want peace. When I looked up, she was crying silently. I can't erase what I did, she whispered, but I can start telling the truth. I stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the skyline that used to feel like distance. You already did, I said quietly. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Can I hug you? It took me a moment, then I nodded. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. Two grown women realizing the war had finally ended. And for the first time, I held my sister without resentment. 3 months later, our family gathered again, not for another tense dinner, but for something simpler, a community banquet. The Someday Project had just funded its 100th scholarship. Reporters mingled, local leaders spoke, and I stood at the podium beneath the soft glow of stage lights, looking out at a crowd that included faces I never thought I'd see again. In the front row, Dad sat beside Belle. He looked older, smaller somehow, but there was peace in his eyes. Belle gave me a nervous smile, not the old smug one, but something fragile and real. When it was my turn to speak, I took a slow breath. I used to think success meant proving everyone wrong, I said. But now I know it's about proving to yourself that you can rise even when no one claps. A gentle wave of applause followed, soft, genuine, and full of warmth. Afterward, Belle approached me backstage. You were incredible, she said, her voice steady. You really built something beautiful. I smiled. So did you? I replied. You came back. That takes its own kind of courage. She hesitated, then handed me a small box. Dad wanted you to have this? Inside was Mom's locket, gold, old-fashioned, engraved with 2 names, Madison and Belle. I hadn't seen it since I was a kid. I thought he sold this years ago, I whispered. He almost did, she said. But I stopped him. I told him, maybe someday you'd want it back. For the first time, I didn't feel the old weight of resentment in my chest, just gratitude. Quiet, fragile, real. Later that night, when the guests had gone and the hall was empty, I stood alone on the stage, the locket resting in my palm. All those years chasing approval, running from envy, carrying anger, they had led me here. Not richer, just freer. I looked up at the lights and smiled. I didn't buy peace, I whispered. I earned it. And as I stepped down from the stage, I saw Belle waiting by the door, not as my rival, but as my sister.